Cover Killer Nation, we are months away from a new Opeth album. Now, a lot of you know that Opeth's one of my favorite bands, but you also know, probably from being a heavy metal fan or a fan of metal music, that Opeth's last album, Heritage, definitely divided a lot of people. Whether they be true fans or people who were just getting into the band, this was definitely kind of a left turn for Opeth. It was one that really embraced a new direction. Last year during the Music Madness 2013 tournament, where Music Madness 2014 will be coming here in less than a week, unless you're viewing this from the future, then it may have already happened, somebody during the final round, where Opeth was taking on Mastodon to determine the Music Madness champion, which Opeth in fact won, suggested that I make a video discussing what I think that this new album is going to sound like. Now, granted, we've had, within the past now nearly 12 months, a chance and an opportunity to cheat a little bit. Mikkel has definitely given us some information about what the album is going to sound like, some of the different writing processes he's been going through, and everything like that. But there's still some brainstorming that can be done. There's still some tone that can be potentially established and hypothesized, so I think there's something that I need to do with regard to that right here today. I don't think that the direction on Heritage is one that's going to be a one-off. I don't believe that this is a band in Opeth that does a one-off album like that, notices that it causes division, notices that perhaps true fans are calling out for classic tracks with death metal vocals at the concerts, and immediately retracts. I don't see them as that style of a band. I see Opeth as a style of the band that really makes music that they feel and that they love, because that's what they feel and that's what they love. Those are the different sides of the group, those are the different sides of Mike himself, and it's something where the writing process, very simply, is reflected among mood. It's reflected among not necessarily, having to fulfill an archetype of what an Opeth album is supposed to sound like, but rather one that makes each experience a bit unique. It makes each experience kind of memorable. Like it or not, whether you loved or hated Heritage, it's something that you are, something that you know, something that you remember, something that is in your mind. So, in effect, even if you didn't like the album did, in fact, fulfill its job and its task. I think that this album continues on that direction a little bit, but perhaps adds some even more seminal 1970s progressive elements. This is something where you may see even more deviation into the obscure, into sounds that perhaps haven't been heard by conventional music fans unless they've dug really, really deep into the catalogs of both progressive rock music, progressive music in general, or avant-garde, or even some of the really old-school classics of that decade. And really, these are sounds that haven't been heard in perhaps close to 40 years, unless you did that digging, because they've been out there for those 40 years. Those subsections of music have not died in the past 40 years. It's not something that's necessarily been on the front page of any magazines. It's not something that's been hearkened and heralded by a lot of different individuals in the music media, but these are bands that are still out there. These are forms and styles of music that still do have a relevance, and they still have fan bases, albeit they may number fewer than others. I see this as an album that definitely explores those tones a lot more, that really showcase a lot more of the moody elements and the moody sides that Opeth is really able to attain. Something that Heritage was very, very good at really kind of exemplifying, something that perhaps true fans were disappointed about because they were able to get those same moods, they were able to get those same emotions from the albums that came in the past. However, these were ones that were done in a different style. I also feel that this is something that the element and the experience of Storm Corrosion, working directly with Stephen Wilson of Porcupine Tree on a full album, will certainly help shape and mold some of Mike's future writing direction whenever it comes to this record. Now, this is something that has been slightly confirmed. It's something that has been kind of talked about, not to mention discussed, by not only the band themselves, Mike and the rest of the boys, but also it's been within the music media, etc., etc. So it may seem as though I'm rehashing something that's already been talked about. However, I feel that the Storm Corrosion idea really did something for Mike that gave him this this tremendous freedom to really express himself musically in any form in which he is feeling. Something that he's kind of always had the ability to do. However, whenever you have a band that has kind of a sound that is instantly recognizable, as Opeth does, whether some people want to confirm that idea or not, there is sometimes a great deal and a grand amount of pressure in order to really maintain that sound and really maintain what the band has already pre-established in order to maintain themselves as the band that they are and continue to have those fans, continue to have those sales, continue to have all the things that make you seemingly a cultural force. I think that freedom of Storm Corrosion, of exploring some really weird, some very haunting, some creepy elements in sound, is something that you can also expect from the new Opeth record. I think you can also expect huge songs that definitely have a lot more in the way of length to it. I think that that's something that Heritage perhaps was sorely missing. These were tracks that really, whenever you consider some of the previous Opeth albums, have a lot more of a shortness to them, and I think that on this album we may see something that has a little bit more of a build to it, something that has a little bit more of a grand philosophy behind it. At least that's something that I hope to see. It's something that I would really, really enjoy, because I think that whenever you're able to expand a composition to a grand scale, it really opens up the possibilities. It really opens a lot of doors. It gives you the opportunity to really infuse so many different sides of your musical philosophy and really just create a grand masterpiece. Consider Black Rose Immortal. Why is that such an instantly recognizable song? Why is that something that, for me personally, is my favorite Opeth song of all time, or at least one of them? It's because it's a song that has a widely expansive environment, something that there's so many different sides and parts to this track, and so many different emotions that are conveyed in just a couple of moments, but whenever you combine it with the grand whole, it really creates something that is memorable. It really creates something that you feel. It really is a story that feels as though it is moving and flowing in purely musical motion. I can tell you what fans would want. A large subsection of fans would love to see Opeth go back to the days of Ghost Reveries and Still Life, or even all the way back to albums such as Morning Rise. They want to see the death metal slash softness duality really, really make a grand comeback on this album. And this is something I don't think you're going to see. And if you do happen to see any of it on this record, expect it to be in a very, very small element. I don't really feel that this is something that at this stage in 2014, Opeth really feels to be a necessary portion of their sound. They instead, I think, really want to be a band that's innovative. A band that is able to, instead of being pigeonholed, kind of expand and break out of that own box and create something even grander. Almost like an artist that's done nothing but portraits throughout the course of their career, finally breaking out and doing landscapes, or, doing very, abstract scenes. This is a breakout process. This is one in which really the freedom of expression is finally back on the plate of this band, and they plan on exhibiting that in grand force. I'm really excited about this album. I was excited about Heritage, and I was kind of, whenever I reviewed it, I was nice, but at the same time I also expressed the fact that this was going to be a difficult listen for a lot of people. It was almost going to, I think for some individuals, mark the ending of an era, something that felt almost like a betrayal, even though it wasn't a betrayal. Instead, it was the band doing something really and truly unique. A lot of people probably looked at Heritage as Opeth's, Saint Anger, the Opeth's, Elid Divinium Insanus, the album in which Opeth kind of, forgot who they were. I don't see it that way. I see this as an album where Opeth, and especially Mike, kind of finally were able to be given the opportunity to be who they are, to really make music that is shaped around something that has driven them for years. I mean, there are videos that exist out there of Mikkel and Steven Wilson from Porcupine Tree having prog-offs where trivia has been tested to both of them, with Steven kicking Mike's ass, but it's because Steven is a full, all-out prog nerd. But this is something where I think a lot more individuals need to look at this from a musical aspect. They need to look at it from a freedom aspect, from an artistry aspect. This is something that gives Opeth the freedom to basically do whatever they want, instead of being pigeonholed in one small subsection. A subsection that I will always love, a subsection I will always adore. a subsection that I will always go back to, whereas Heritage is one where you kind of have to have the proper mood. But still, Heritage is no slouch. Heritage is a grand experiment, a bold one that really took a lot of guts. And I think that this album, it's going to take a lot of guts too, because I don't think everybody is over Heritage yet. And I don't think they're going to really be willing to accept this album immediately. So there's going to have to be a little bit of a balancing act that's done. But at the same portion, and by the same token, Opeth should feel the freedom to do essentially whatever they want. And really make perhaps one of the darkest, most brooding, most moody, most weird and haunting albums out there. They can do whatever they want. They have that freedom. What do you guys think? What would you like to see from the next Opeth album that's coming here just within the next couple short months? What would you like to see, and what do you think you're going to see? Let's talk about it.